Watch how Westminster closes a dramatic parliamentary session with fiery confrontations, political accusations and fierce scrutiny as Keir Starmer faces his final PMQs. With Britain's future direction under the spotlight, MPs clash over leadership, immigration and local government in one unforgettable day inside the Commons. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe to Britain Daily for more explosive political coverage. Let's watch this explosive clip.
In the King's speech last month, he told me that on difficult days, my input was always a ray of sunshine. He might not have answered many of the questions I asked him, but at least he turned up. It is important to respect Parliament. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that his successor should come to this place and answer questions rather than scurrying away for the summer?
Yeah.
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister, I have participated in over 60 PMQs. Always a pleasure, always something to look forward to. And I've answered, or at least given answers, on 2,800 times, and I'm sure she will question my successor in the same way.
We've all watched this particular film before. The Secretary of State, who once again scurries away to avoid scrutiny, tried to cancel local elections. And he was caught putting his thumb on the scales and was forced into an embarrassing climb down that cost time, it cost money, and it undermined confidence in politics and local government. And he's setting about the biggest reorganisation of local government in more than half a century, and is doing so with no mandate for a change of this scale. And now ministers appear to be desperate to avoid scrutiny by announcing these decisions on the final day of sitting before the House rises for summer recess, a pattern that we have seen before. And the Minister insists that these new shadow authorities, the elections for shadow authorities will take place next year. But we also heard that the elections for county mayors was going to happen of May of this year. And spoiler alert, Mr. Speaker, they didn't happen. They didn't happen. In many areas, there is still no agreed authority boundaries, no ward boundaries, no legislative timetable. How are councils, candidates and electors supposed to prepare for elections without these key details? And, Mr. Speaker, why is it that Labour councillors are allowed to redraw the boundaries of the very authorities that they hope to represent before any independent review by the Local Government Boundary Commission? And if this process is not about narrow party political advantage, why were Labour MPs and councillors briefed before this House was? If the elections are to happen next year, the government must bring forward the necessary legislation before the House rises. And so I ask that the government breaks with tradition and is open and transparent, avoids diktat from the centre, or is it really the legacy of the Secretary of State to leave things in such a shambles?
I must advise the House that the case relating to Ahmed Dickham's death is not yet sub judice, as charges have not been brought. However, there is a live criminal investigation ongoing and members should take care not to say anything in this House that might prejudice the future trial. I therefore urge members to avoid speculating about the guilt or innocence of any person, the identity of the person who has been arrested, or the motive for the attack.
Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, Anne Widdecombe was murdered in her home. The circumstances of her death are extremely distressing. Counter-terrorism policing have now taken the lead in the investigation. As Lawrence Taylor, the head of National Counter-Terrorism Policing, has said, and I quote, "We now have new information and evidence that means counter-terrorism policing is leading the investigation. We are pursuing multiple lines of inquiry to establish the motivation for this attack." The police now have a suspect in custody, a 28-year-old white British man, and I can confirm to the House that this man was not known to prevent. The police have cautioned against speculating about the case. That is the right thing to do for Anne's family and friends. It is also vital that the police are given the space they need to carry out their work. For now, what matters most is supporting the investigation so that we can see justice delivered for Anne and all who loved her. And I would urge anyone with any information at all to come forward immediately.
Let me touch now, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the proposal for so-called safe and legal routes or refugee sponsorship. Now, these numbers would be additional to the asylum claims we're already processing. Last year saw the highest number of asylum claims in history. I think from memory it was somewhere in the region of 109,000. And this current year will only be a little bit less. So to add to that, at a time when we already have record numbers of asylum claims, strikes me as irresponsible. The Home Secretary said there would be a cap, but she didn't specify what the cap would be. I'd be interested to hear it. She also asserted that the people coming in on these routes would not be a burden on the general taxpayer because their sponsor would look after them. But what she neglected to mention was that support only has to last for the first year. Thereafter, potentially the taxpayer will have to pick up the tab. So I must say I do not support the creation of these schemes until we have got illegal immigration and asylum claims down essentially to zero.
This is a total humiliation and embarrassment for the government. Yesterday, they published an emergency change to government business in order to ram the Hillsborough law through this House with no notice and an absolute minimum of scrutiny. Now they have backtracked again on their own business and cancelled the opposition day, which they themselves had scheduled. Now, why is that, Mr. Speaker? Let me read the motion that caused so much consternation in the Whip's office and in number 10, that this House calls on the government to bring forward a motion to change the date it adjourns to Monday, 20th of July, to enable the new Prime Minister to make a statement about his plans for government. In other words, the government changed the business. It refused even to delay the activity of this House by one day in order to permit the Prime Minister, as he will be, to take a statement and to answer questions as to his intentions and plans. The government has a majority of more than 150, Mr. Speaker, and it could not trust its MPs to vote the right way on that motion. And it could not bear the idea of a new Prime Minister facing any scrutiny before September. A Prime Minister, let me remind us all, who has been chosen by a coronation, not a contest, with no known platform, almost no known policies, and no idea of his priorities or indeed his cabinet team. They pushed us, Mr. Speaker, to take an opposition day tomorrow. They cannot bear the scrutiny, and now they're cancelling it. And to do so, hiding under the, I'm afraid, thoroughly distastefully, under the news, the very distressing news that's happening in Iran, when they could have framed a statement today from a minister or tomorrow on this issue is, I think, completely disreputable. They're not even cancelling it, Mr. Speaker, for legislation. They could have kept the Representation of the People Act. They're cancelling it for a general debate with no votes. Mr. Speaker, it's the worst possible exit for a Prime Minister, the desperate attempt to create a legacy as though this could alter 2 solid years of failure. And it is the worst possible start for a new Prime Minister. People across this country will see what has happened and they will conclude that this is a man who is frit, running scared of public scrutiny before he can even take office.
Control room operators at the National Energy System Operator have the life or death job of balancing our electricity supply and demand. If they don't get it right, we will have blackouts, and in blackouts, people die. It is that serious, which makes what I'm about to say all the more extraordinary. I've been approached by multiple whistleblowers within our grid operator. The allegations are that first, on the 23rd of June, the operator failed to meet the grid security standards put in place to prevent blackouts. Second, that the corporate affairs team interfered with operational decisions. That is not something that the minister denied, putting the reputation of the operator above security of supply. And third, that operational decisions are being recorded in live documents with no audit trail. Again, something the minister did not deny. I first raised questions on the 2nd of June. Since then, we have had 3 public electricity margin notices, warnings to the market that we may be short on supply. I cannot stress enough that this is completely unprecedented. Multiple whistleblowers have now come forward. This too is unprecedented. I've raised this twice now in the House, and despite the seriousness of the allegations, shockingly on both occasions the government dismissed me as scaremongering. Considering the consequences of blackouts to people's lives, this is nothing short of a disgrace. Let me be clear. The whistleblowers who've put the national interest over their own careers should be celebrated for their courage and their integrity, not denigrated. So will the government finally get a grip on this? And can the Minister guarantee that every single control room operator who wants to share their concerns will be given the opportunity to do this anonymously?
Today's Commons proceedings marked the end of one of the most eventful parliamentary sessions in recent years, bringing together debates over leadership, immigration, local government reform, and the future direction of the country. Keir Starmer's final Prime Minister's questions ended on a notably measured note, as he reflected on his time answering MPs, while Kemi Badenoch argued that his successor should also face parliamentary scrutiny, rather than delaying accountability until after the summer recess. Elsewhere in the Commons, ministers came under sustained pressure over immigration policy, while Conservative MPs questioned the government's plans for local government reorganisation, arguing that major constitutional changes should receive full parliamentary scrutiny and transparency before implementation. For many people watching at home, debates like these are about far more than political rivalry. They touch on issues that affect everyday life, how local services are run, how public money is spent, how immigration is managed, and whether those in power remain accountable to Parliament. Regardless of political views, most people expect elected leaders to answer difficult questions openly and make decisions that strengthen trust in Britain's democratic institutions. As Westminster heads into the summer recess, today's exchanges leave behind unanswered questions that are certain to return when Parliament reconvenes. With a new Prime Minister preparing to take office, expectations for the next parliamentary session will be higher than ever. What do you think? Did today's final Commons clashes show healthy democratic scrutiny, or do you believe Parliament still has important questions left unanswered? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. And if you enjoy comprehensive coverage of Westminster's biggest debates, please like this video, subscribe to Britain Daily, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest PMQs, Commons debates, and breaking political news from Parliament